Okay, so let's get right into it. We're going to talk about a guy whose name you've probably seen on a street sign or a county map, Richard Montgomery. But trust me, his actual story, it's one of the most dramatic and complicated tales from the entire American Revolution. So this incredible painting right here, this is where we're going to start. But it's actually the end of the story. Picture this. It's New Year's Eve, 1775. A massive blizzard is raging outside the walls of Quebec City. An American general, sword in the air, is leading a desperate charge. And then, a blast of cannon fire, and he falls. The first American general to die in the Revolution. And what's crazy is that everyone mourned him, not just the Americans. Poets, politicians, even members of the British Parliament, the very people he was fighting against. So that begs the question, right? Who was this guy? How does an Irish-born, decorated British officer end up dying for the American cause?
Well, to really get it, we've got to rewind. Before he was a rebel general, he was a redcoat. And not just any redcoat, he was a legit rising star in the British Army.
I mean, his life seemed totally mapped out for him. He was born in Ireland to a really well-connected family, went to Trinity College in Dublin, and then his dad just bought him a commission in the British Army. You know, just like his father, who was an officer and a member of Parliament. It was the classic career path.
And check this out. His military resume is just wow. For 15 years, this guy was everywhere. He fought for Britain all over North America, down in the Caribbean. He's at the Siege of Louisbourg. He helps capture Fort Ticonderoga. He gets promoted again and again. He was building this incredible reputation for being brave, for being a real leader.
But, you know, things changed. Peacetime soldiering, it just wasn't for him. And then he gets passed over for a big promotion, probably because he was known to be a little too friendly with the American colonists' point of view. And that was kind of the last straw. He got fed up, sold his commission, and decided he was going to be a farmer in America.
So he does it. He moves to New York, buys a farm, and then he meets and marries Janet Livingston. And this was a huge deal. He didn't just marry for love. He married into one of the most powerful, influential families in the entire colony, a family that was, let's say, very much leaning towards the patriot side of things. For a minute there, it seemed like he had it all, the quiet country life he always wanted.
Okay, but this is where the story gets really complicated, because that quiet country life he built for himself, it was built on the institution of slavery. He became an enslaver. And this is a really big deal, because for centuries, biographers just kind of skipped over this part. It wasn't until some student journalists, of all people, dug up his will that the truth came out. And you can see it right there in his own handwriting, listed along with his horses and his books, enslaved people. So this just shatters that simple hero story, doesn't it? It puts Montgomery right at the heart of that massive central contradiction of the American Revolution. You know, this grand fight for liberty being led by men who literally owned other people. And he wasn't some exception to the rule. Marrying into the Livingstons meant marrying into one of the biggest slave-owning families in New York. He was part of the system.
All right, so that's the backdrop. And just as he's settling into this complex new life, tensions with Great Britain are about to explode. His quiet life as a farmer? Yeah, that was about to end.
And you can see here, he says he didn't even want the job. He called the commission entirely unexpected and undesired. But let's be real. With his resume, the new Continental Army couldn't afford not to have him. His experience was just too valuable. So even though he wanted to be a farmer, he felt this duty, this obligation, and he accepted the rank of brigadier general. And they didn't waste any time. Almost immediately, he gets handed one of the most ambitious and honestly one of the craziest plans of the entire war, a full-scale invasion of Canada. Yet the big idea was to launch this two-pronged attack, capture Montreal and Quebec, and hopefully convince Canada to join the revolution as the 14th colony. Montgomery was supposed to be the number 2 guy under General Philip Schuyler. But then Schuyler gets sick, and suddenly the whole thing is on Montgomery's shoulders. He's in charge. And this is where you really see his skill as a general shine. I mean, think about the situation. His troops are mostly undisciplined militia, the weather is turning bad, it's getting cold, but he pulls it off. He starts with a brutal 45-day siege of Fort St. Jean. Then, in a really smart move, he captures the weaker Fort Chambly, which gets him the gunpowder and supplies he desperately needs. That breaks the stalemate, Fort St. Jean falls, and just 10 days later, he marches into Montreal without a fight. It was just a textbook campaign. So Montreal is a huge win, but he's not done. He pushes on to the main objective, the fortress city of Quebec. He links up with another American army there, led by a guy you've probably heard of, Benedict Arnold. But look at the numbers here. The situation is just awful. They're outnumbered, their supplies are terrible, enlistments are about to run out, and they're staring at the walls of one of the most powerful forts in the entire continent. And here's the kicker. The enlistments for most of his soldiers, they were up on January 1st. He was about to lose his army. He knew he had one shot, a single, desperate, all-or-nothing attack on New Year's Eve. And that brings us full circle, right back to that painting. In the middle of that blizzard, Montgomery leads the charge personally. He's out front shouting, "Come on, my good soldiers, your general calls upon you to come on." But the British defenders inside the city, they were ready. They let him get close, really close, and then unleashed a volley of cannon grape shot. He was killed instantly. And just like that, the attack collapsed. The dream of Canada joining the revolution died with him in the snow. The news was devastating back in the colonies. But something interesting happened. The military defeat, it was almost immediately transformed into a story of heroic sacrifice. Richard Montgomery became the revolution's very first martyr. He became a legend. Congress commissioned this incredible monument for him in France. His name started popping up everywhere. Counties, cities, schools. He was a national hero. I mean, even George Washington called it a heavy loss. But what's truly mind-blowing is how he was mourned in Britain. In Parliament, his old political allies stood up and praised his bravery. Some London newspapers even put black borders on their pages, a sign of mourning for a rebel general. Can you imagine that happening today? So this is what we're left with, this really stark contrast. You've got the hero on one side, right? The brave British officer who sides with liberty, the brilliant general, the revolution's first martyr. But on the other side, you have the enslaver, a man who listed people as property in his will, and who was part of the very system of oppression that this revolution, well, that it failed to end. So his story is anything but simple. It really forces you to look at those uncomfortable truths right at the heart of the nation's founding. And it leaves us with this big question, one that we're still wrestling with today. What do we do with a hero like Richard Montgomery? How do we remember a man who fought so bravely for liberty while at the same time denying it to others?